In the vast, rolling expanses of the northern wilds, where ice and forest meld into an endless tapestry of shimmering light and haunting shadow, the ancient echoes of a time long past stirred once more. The indigenous people, keepers of forgotten lore and guardians of the sacred balance, have for generations revered the polar bear as the spirit bear. To them, this majestic creature was not merely an animal but a divine messenger imbued with the noble soul of pristine ice and eternal winter. Its silvered fur, catching the glint of the aurora like scattered stardust, was a living testament to nature's purity and strength, a symbol of hope and protection. Entrusted with the task of guarding the land from destructive forces. Long ago, when the world was young and the territories of man and myth lay not divided, a brave tribal leader, driven by desperation and guided by ancient vision, had knelt upon the frozen earth. In a time of dire need, when the Wendigo, that hideous embodiment of insatiable greed and unquenchable hunger, threatened to devour the spirit of the people, the chieftain's fervent prayers had ascended into the heavens. He pleaded for the intervention of the spirit bear, beseeching the gods to send forth their divine emissary to drive the monstrous Wendigo out of their homeland. Miraculously, the winds shifted and a radiant bear, shimmering with an otherworldly light, answered the call. In the ensuing battle, the Wendigo was forced into the crevices of shadow, and the spirit bear took its rightful place as the tribe's living talisman, a guardian against corruption and excess. Thus, the legend was born, etched in the collective memory of a people whose reverence for nature knew no bounds. Yet the present brought challenges unforeseen by the ancients. In recent years, the relentless march of climate change had awakened the slumbering curse, as the ice melted and the balance of nature shifted. The Wendigo stirred from its dark lair. Scarcity of food and human discord fanned its malevolent desires. Whispers began to circulate among the elders, that the destructive influence of greed and exploitation had given the cursed spirit new life. The once dormant Wendigo, cunning as ever, had begun to creep from the recesses of hidden valleys and frost-laden forests. Lured by the scent of desperation and the broken trust between man and nature. In response, a small band of determined young warriors and cultural researchers, descendants of that ancient lineage, set forth upon a perilous journey. Their quest was to find the fabled, divine bear, a polar bear marked by the gods. Distinguished by a coat of shimmering silver or bearing a mystical sign that none but the spirit bear could possess. To them, the divine creature was the only hope to once again reclaim the lost equilibrium. With hearts fortified by ancestral pride and the sacred duty of stewardship toward the land, the group embraced the bitter chill, navigating blizzards, riven ice flows, and the treacherous terrain of a transformed wilderness where every creak of shifting snow might conceal the lurking horror of the Wendigo. For days they traveled across a realm of conflicting visions. At times, the landscape seemed like a pristine utopia, sunlight glinting off clear blue ice, the horizon awash in pastel hues of dawn, while at other moments, darkness crept in with spectral intensity, as if the cursed spirit of the Wendigo had painted the sky in bruised shadows. Along their arduous trek, the young seekers encountered signs and portents, ancient carvings hidden in glacial caves, mysterious footprints pressed into soft drift snow, and whispered legends shared by weathered elders in remote villages. Each sign reaffirmed their belief that nature, though battered by modern greed and unforeseen change, still held the secret to its own salvation. One fateful night, beneath a vault of glittering stars and an auroral display that spilled ribbons of emerald and violet across the sky, the band arrived at a clearing where time appeared to halt. The air was charged with a sublime energy that felt both ancient and alive, an atmosphere that spoke of old magic and eternal promises. And there, emerging from the silent majesty of the wild, stood the divine bear. Its coat was a luminous spectacle, as if dusted with the very essence of winter's first snow. Its eyes shone with a deep, knowing light, and every step it took left a shimmering imprint upon the pristine ground. A sacred signature of nature's enduring power. But the moment of awe was fleeting. From the darkened fringes of the clearing came a chilling sound, a low, guttural cry, like the wail of a forsaken soul. The Wendigo, drawn by the potent aura of the spirit bear and the vulnerability of a renewed hope, descended from the surrounding gloom. Its form was a perversion of natural beauty, gaunt and twisted, with eyes aflame with hunger and malice. Its presence marked by a putrid chill that clashed with the radiant warmth of the divine bear's aura. The clearing transformed into a battlefield of myth and nature, where the forces of light and darkness prepared to clash in a struggle as old as time. As the two entities approached, the very air around them crackled with the tension of ancient rivalry. The divine bear let out a resounding roar, a sound that reverberated off the surrounding peaks and stirred the hearts of those who had come to witness this storied event. With a power that seemed to channel the fury of winter itself, the bear unleashed a burst of icy energy. Frost cascaded like shattered glass through the air, and the cold light of the aurora swirled around its form. In response, the Wendigo cried out in anguish, a sound that mingled despair with an unyielding hunger. It lunged, its spectral form twisting with unnatural agility as it sought to overpower the divine guardian. The ensuing battle was a spectacle of elemental ferocity. In a clash that reverberated through the ages, the divine bear's roars and the Wendigo's howls intermingled with the music of wind and frost. Trees shuddered as if caught in the grip of a hidden force, and the very ground trembled beneath the titanic exchange of power. The spirit bear harnessed the pristine energy of its sacred lineage, summoning bursts of blinding, cold brilliance that turned the night into a tableau of crystalline light. Every mighty stride and every echoing bellow was imbued with the conviction of the tribe's ancient covenant, that nature would always find a way to reclaim its balance, that greed and destruction would yield to the purity of creation. At the zenith of the confrontation, as the Wendigo's dark tendrils reached out to claim the vulnerable hope represented by the divine bear's presence, an explosion of light and cold radiated outward. The air shimmered with the intensity of ancient magic as the spirit bear channeled the collective prayers and hopes of its people. In that cataclysmic moment, luminous frost cascaded over the Wendigo, encasing it in a prison of ice. The cursed spirit shrieked and writhed against its crystalline bonds, its form flickering like a dying ember in the bitter cold. The overwhelming brilliance, powered by nature's deep resolve, slowly began to disperse the shadow of the Wendigo. The malefic force, unable to withstand the purity of the spirit bear's divine energy, convulsed and then faded, its influence scattering like motes in a beam of light. When at last the tumult subsided, the clearing lay bathed in an eerie, yet serene, glow. The Wendigo's threat had been vanquished, at least for a season, and the divine bear, its silver coat glistening in the aftermath, stood as a silent sentinel over the restored balance. The warriors and scholars who had risked all for this moment fell to their knees in reverent awe, their voices joining in ancient chants of gratitude and hope. In the distance, the winds carried whispered promises that nature, though ever vulnerable to human avarice and unforeseen calamities, possessed an unyielding capacity to heal itself. In the days that followed, as the divine bear disappeared once again into the shifting mists of the north, the indigenous people returned to their daily lives with hearts lightened by the victory of their sacred myth. They regarded the long-quieted curse as a stern reminder of the perils of unchecked greed and environmental neglect, a cautionary tale that nature's gift of balance is as fragile as it is eternal. Gathered around flickering fires and beneath expansive, unending skies, elders recounted the epic confrontation to wide-eyed children, instilling in them the sacred duty to honor, protect, and nurture the land. The legend of the spirit bear, and of the monstrous Wendigo driven back into darkness, grew into an abiding philosophy, that the natural world, in its infinite resilience, forever finds the means to restore equilibrium, even in the face of humanity's darkest impulses. Thus, as the seasons turned and the ice reformed over scarred battlegrounds, the timeless message remained etched upon the heart of the land. Nature, in its boundless wisdom, always has a way to mend its wounds. The divine bear had vanished into legend once more, leaving behind not only evidence of its glorious intervention but also a profound call to respect and safeguard the world's wild places. In every sunrise over pristine snow, in every gentle caress of a cool breeze, and in every whispered memory of that storied night, the eternal dance between creation and destruction, light and shadow, continued, a living reminder that the balance of nature is sacred and must be preserved at all costs. And so, beneath skies that now shone with a promise of renewal, The ancient land and its people embraced a future of vigilance and hope, a future where the curse of the Wendigo would linger only as a cautionary fable, and where the enduring spirit of the divine polar bear would forever serve as a beacon of nature's everlasting grace. The ancient fires of legend had long been passed down through whispered stories and sacred ceremonies among the indigenous people. Inspired by these timeless teachings and troubled by the mounting signs of the Wendigo's resurgence, a group of impassioned young warriors and dedicated cultural researchers set forth under a leaden sky. They left behind the familiar warmth of their ancestral village, driven by a solemn duty to renew the balance that nature had once maintained so elegantly. Clad in furs and the regalia of their forebears, they ventured into the boundless, harsh wilderness, a realm where the frozen earth bore scars of ancient conflicts and where the very air vibrated with the echoes of lost lore. Their journey began at the break of a bitter winter dawn, when the world emerged from night's grasp in a quiet display of icy resilience. The landscape that unfurled before them was a mosaic of contorted ice floes, glittering under a low-hanging sun and endless stretches of white interspersed with glacial hues of blue and gray. The group advanced slowly over treacherous ground, the brittle ice beneath their padded boots cracked and groaned with each tentative step, as if reluctant to support the hopes and fears of these brave souls. The merciless wind buffeted their faces, carrying with it both the aroma of ancient pine and an undercurrent of melancholy, a silent reminder that nature's beauty and cruelty were irrevocably intertwined. As they pressed deeper into the wilderness, the travelers encountered the first tangible signs of nature's transformation. The once solid expanse of ice had begun to disintegrate in patches, surrendering to the relentless advance of warming air and unpredictable storms. Melting rivulets of water snaked through the frozen terrain, creating perilous pockets where stability was but an illusion. Amid these shifting conditions, they discovered remnants of the old world, weathered totems and stone carvings etched into the faces of glacier-carved cliffs, each a silent testament to the ancient covenant between the tribal peoples and the spirit of the ice. These sacred markers, half buried in snow, seemed to murmur forgotten secrets as the group paused to interpret their symbolic meaning. Drawing strength from the legacy of their ancestors, the journey was not solely one of physical endurance, it was a test of spirit and belief in the face of pervasive darkness. As day progressed, a palpable tension grew among the travelers. They had heard the elders' cautionary tales, that the Wendigo, an embodiment of insatiable greed and boundless hunger, fed off the decay and despair wrought by environmental imbalance. The group had noticed peculiar disturbances along their path, shadows that moved with a life of their own. The soft, almost imperceptible echoes of discordant howls that seemed to emanate from the very earth. And the sudden, inexplicable chill that swept over them despite the clear, bright sky. Each of these omens was a silent warning that the ancient curse was not fully dormant, rather, it stirred in the hidden corners of the forest, poised to exploit every crack in the world they had known. In the midst of a biting afternoon, as the sun glinted off the myriad facets of the melting ice, the travelers encountered their first true test. Navigating a narrow pass lined with towering, frost-bound boulders, they suddenly found themselves forced to take refuge as a brutal blizzard swept in with little warning. The wind howled like a chorus of ancient spirits in agony, and the landscape transformed almost instantaneously into a maelstrom of swirling snow and slashing ice. Shielding their eyes and huddling close under makeshift tarps and woven hides, they endured the onslaught of nature's fury. In that claustrophobic, white-out moment, every sound was muted save for their collective heartbeat and the insidious drumming of the storm, a reminder that amid chaos, the smallest ember of hope must be fiercely guarded. Emerging from the tempest, the group found a world transformed. The storm had scoured the landscape clean, revealing a startling clarity in the ruins of the familiar terrain. In the aftermath, beneath an expansive sky clear and brilliant as polished crystal, peculiar tracks marred the otherwise pristine snow. Deep, elongated impressions, too large for the ordinary creatures of the land, traced a winding path along the forest's edge. The markings, as dark as the void, sent a shiver of foreboding through them. They knew these were not mere signs of passing wildlife. They were the unmistakable trace of the Wendigo's elusive, corrupting influence creeping ever closer. Continuing onward, the The group ventured into the heart of an ancient, snow-clad forest. Here, towering evergreens stood as silent guardians of secrets older than memory, their boughs heavy with frost and illuminated by shafts of bright, unwavering sunlight. The interplay of light and shadow in this hallowed grove was almost surreal. Every glint of snow, every ripple in the still, cold air, seemed charged with both promise and peril. It was in this ethereal environment that the young warriors and scholars first encountered a series of cryptic symbols etched into the rough bark of a venerable cedar, symbols that, according to legend, were imbued with the power of the spirit bear. These ancient runes, worn smooth by the passage of countless winters, told the story of a mighty chieftain who had once invoked the celestial power of the divine bear to banish the Wendigo from his people's lands. They paused in reverence, absorbing the sacred message and feeling, in that silent communion with the past, a surge of determination to revive the ancient covenant. Their spirits were buoyed by this connection to the old ways, yet the ever-present threat of the Wendigo lingered at the edges of their awareness. As daylight waned into a gentle, golden dusk, the travelers made camp in a natural clearing ringed by silver birch trees. They kindled a modest fire, its flames dancing like delicate spirits against the oncoming cold, and gathered to share their hopes and fears. In hushed voices, they recounted the legends of old, of a time when the spirit bear had been a living embodiment of nature's divine grace, whose shimmering coat and noble bearing had inspired awe and reverence in all who beheld it. With every whispered word, the memory of that fabled creature grew more vivid in their minds, fueling their determination to find it and, in so doing, restore balance to the land. That night, under a vast expanse of starlit heavens and the soft glow of a waxing moon, the camp was suffused with an almost tangible energy, a convergence of ancient hope and the unyielding force of nature. Yet even as the flames crackled and the elders' voices wove the old tales into the fabric of the night, an unsettling sound disturbed the fragile harmony of the wilderness. From the far reaches of the forest came the low, mournful cry of a beast not entirely of this world, a sound that seemed to vibrate with sorrow and a dark, insidious promise. The young warriors exchanged apprehensive glances while the cultural scholars, their hearts heavy with the weight of ancestral memory, silently acknowledged that the Wendigo, the harbinger of greed and ruin, was gathering strength once again amid the chaos wrought by a changing world. Resolute in their duty, the band resolved to press onward at first light. They understood that their quest was not merely one of discovery, but of renewal, a return to an era when nature and humanity existed in sacred balance. The promise of the divine bear's emergence was their beacon in the encroaching darkness, a living symbol that the ancient curse could be challenged, that even in the face of overwhelming malevolence, the natural world retained an unyielding capacity to heal and to protect. With eyes fixed on the horizon and hearts bound by a shared purpose, they fell into a weary slumber beneath the protective canopy of the forest, each dream imbued with visions of radiant ice and the resplendent form of the spirit bear shining like a celestial guardian in the midst of a storm. As the first soft hues of dawn broke through the lingering veil of night, the group stirred and gathered their meager belongings. The renewed light brought with it a sense of urgency tempered by newfound hope. They resumed their journey, trekking along a narrow, winding trail marked by the delicate imprint of frost on ancient stone. The landscape, now bathed in the gentle glow of morning, appeared to whisper promises of redemption. Crystalline droplets hung in the air like fragments of shattered ice, and the sun's rays refracted against the snow to create fleeting rainbows that danced upon the frozen ground. Yet, no sooner had hope kindled in their hearts than the forest revealed one of its most foreboding secrets. In a clearing at the edge of an ancient grove, they stumbled upon a sight both wondrous and terrible, a massive, time-worn carving of a bear, rendered in intricate detail and imbued with symbols long forgotten. This relic, half hidden beneath layers of lichen and ice, was said to be a memorial to the original spirit bear, a monument erected in reverence to a divine protector of the land. As they examined the carving with awestruck silence, the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of water fostered a brief moment of calm, as if the very earth was offering its benediction upon their noble endeavor. Yet the promise of peace was fleeting, for deep within the forest's murky shadows lurked the ever-present specter of the Wendigo. now more than ever, as the fragile equilibrium teetered upon the edge of renewal and ruin. The dark force stirred with renewed intensity. The travelers could feel its presence in the whispering winds and in the subtle tremors of the earth, an ominous counterpoint to the delicate beauty of the morning. With every step they took, the spectral chill of the cursed spirit accompanied them, a silent reminder that the restoration of nature's balance would demand both sacrifice and courage. Thus, as the band pressed deeper into this hallowed and haunted terrain, their journey became a living tapestry woven with threads of ancient myth. The raw power of nature, and the indomitable will of those who seek to restore its sacred harmony. Each challenge they faced, the treacherous ice, the violent storms, the eerie manifestations of the Wendigo, strengthened their resolve. Every whispered legend and every ancestral relic they encountered fortified their belief that the divine bear would one day rise again. A luminous beacon in the long, unyielding winter, in that timeless, bittersweet interplay of light and shadow, hope and despair, the quest for the spirit bear transformed into something greater than mere survival. It became a pilgrimage to reclaim a lost covenant between humanity and nature, a pledge to honor the earth, to preserve its delicate equilibrium, and to confront the dark forces of greed and destruction with the enduring light of ancestral wisdom. And so, beneath the ever-watchful gaze of the ancient pines and the glistening expanse of the Arctic sky, the young warriors and scholars moved forward with hearts ablaze, carrying with them the promise that even in the darkest of times, nature would find a way to heal, and that the divine spark of the spirit bear could ignite a renaissance of balance and beauty across the frozen land. As the pale blue of morning deepened into a resolute day, the journey of the brave band of indigenous warriors and cultural scholars reached its fateful crescendo. Their arduous trek through snowbound forests and along icy ridges had transformed them, not only as individuals embattled by nature's raw, uncompromising force but as heirs to an ancient mandate to restore balance. For days they had pressed on through shifting landscapes that alternated between breathtaking beauty and harrowing peril, each step accompanied by the memory of ancestral voices urging them toward renewal. The promise of the divine spirit bear, the sacred guardian of the land, glimmered on the horizon like a beacon, a living bridge between the timeless wisdom of the past and the uncertain future wrought by modern decay. At last, in a secluded valley bordered by towering, frosted cliffs and illuminated by a brilliant, unyielding sunrise, the seekers came upon a vast clearing that seemed ordained by the gods themselves. The air here was different, charged with an otherworldly energy, as if every particle of frost, every sliver of light, vibrated in harmony with the ancient rhythms of the earth. It was in this hallowed space that nature's covenant was to be renewed, where the sacred and the profane would meet in a final confrontation that had been foretold through endless generations. Within the center of the clearing, upon a patch of immaculate snow that sparkled like diamonds beneath the rising sun, the divine spirit bear appeared, massive and resplendent. Its coat shone with an almost ethereal luster, a cascade of silver and white that reflected the aurora's afterglow. Its eyes, imbued with a calm and knowing brilliance, held within them the weight of centuries of guardianship. The very presence of the spirit bear stirred the clearing into a hushed silence. Even the relentless winds seemed to pause in deference. For the indigenous people, whose hearts were steeped in the lore of their forefathers, the sacred animal was a living testament to nature's enduring purity, an emblem of hope, resilience, and the profound beauty of a world left unblemished by greed. Yet the promise of peace was not unchallenged. From the darkened fringes of the towering pines, where the shadows clung like secrets to every weathered trunk, the Wendigo emerged once more. Its form was the antithesis of all that was pure. The gaunt, twisted silhouette was shrouded in a miasma of despair, and its eyes burned with a seething, malignant red, driven by an insatiable hunger that had long haunted the people's dreams. The Wendigo had grown bolder in the wake of environmental decay and human strife. Its presence, the embodiment of unchecked greed and endless want, threatened to engulf the sacred harmony that the spirit bear so delicately maintained. A moment of unfathomable stillness descended upon the clearing. The two forces, one divine and luminous, the other dark and oppressive, faced each other in a silent standoff that resonated with the weight of ancient prophecy. The people, gathered at a respectful distance, felt an electric shiver ripple through the air as if the very fabric of reality trembled in anticipation of the clash. The spirit bear, with a measured, dignified stride, advanced slowly towards its age-old adversary. Its breath came deep and steady, a rhythmic cadence that recalled the primordial heartbeat of the frozen land. In response, the Wendigo recoiled for a heartbeat before launching itself in a serpentine, predatory lunge, as if the darkness itself had taken corporeal form. Then, in a burst of explosive energy that shattered the lingering calm, the final battle erupted. The spirit bear roared, a sound that vibrated through the valley like the roll of distant thunder. A clarion call that summoned the ancient spirits of ice and wind. In that roar lay both defiance and a sorrowful benediction, an invocation to the forces of nature to purge the corrupting touch of human avarice and moral decay. The Wendigo responded with a screech, a lament that was part rage, part anguish, as it charged with inhuman speed. In the ensuing moments, the clearing became an arena where elemental forces contended with mythic ferocity. Snow and ice were rent asunder by the clashing of titanic wills. The spirit bear, drawing upon the sacred energy of its lineage, seemed to transform the very atmosphere around it. Each powerful step resonated like a drumbeat. Each swipe of its mighty paw stirred fractals of frost that spiraled into shimmering clouds. The majestic creature unleashed a torrent of icy splendor, a radiant burst that cascaded over the Wendigo like a waterfall of crystalline light. For a fleeting moment, time itself appeared to slow as the dark, spectral predator writhed under the overwhelming force of nature's rebuke. Its monstrous form, once agile and relentless, began to falter under the barrage of pure, uncorrupted energy. Around the clearing, the indigenous onlookers, warriors, elders, and scholars alike, felt a profound stirring in their souls. Their gathered voices rose in a near chant, a low, resonant hum that merged seamlessly with the natural symphony of the valley. The sound was as ancient as the wind itself, a murmur of collective hope and unyielding determination. In that moment, the battle was not merely a struggle between beast and spirit but a cosmic reckoning, a reminder that even in the face of inexorable darkness, the light of sacred tradition and environmental wisdom could prevail. The Wendigo, now ensnared in a latticework of ice that pulsed with a fierce, unyielding glow, fought desperately against its newfound bonds. Its furious howls were countered by the spirit bear's steady, resolute roars. The clash of their energies set the very air aglow with silver luminescence and glacial sparks. Slowly, inexorably, the malignant force of the Wendigo was driven back. The radiant ice that had enveloped it began to crystallize, encasing the dark presence in a tomb of frozen light. With one final, shattering cry, a sound that echoed like the lament of a fallen world, the Wendigo's essence cracked under the unrelenting power of nature's retribution and dissolved, scattering into the ether as if it had never truly been. As the last vestiges of that unholy energy faded, a solemn and transcendent calm descended over the clearing. The spirit bear stood victorious, its noble gaze softening with a deep, mournful wisdom. The warriors and scholars, their eyes brimming with reverence and bittersweet relief, knelt upon the immaculate snow to offer silent thanks to the guardians of their heritage. They knew that the curse of the Wendigo might one day stir anew. For the forces of darkness are eternal adversaries in the dance of existence, but for now, balance had been restored, and the natural world was granted a reprieve. In the days that followed, as the aurora danced overhead in luminous ribbons of green and purple and the people returned to their time-honored rituals and daily labors, the legend of the spirit bear grew ever more potent. Elders would recount the epic confrontation around communal fires, weaving the narrative with threads of awe, sorrow, and timeless hope. They reminded the new generation that nature's sacred balance was a covenant to be honored and that the relentless spirit of the wilderness carried within it both the power to punish and the grace to redeem. Every sunrise over the crystalline tundra, every gust of icy wind across the timeless valleys, became a living reminder that humanity must tread with humility and care upon the earth. The divine spirit bear, having restored the equilibrium between light and shadow, vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Some say it returned to the realm of myth, a luminous guardian now visible only in the shimmering reflections on frozen lakes. Others believe it continues to wander the far reaches of the Arctic, its presence a silent pledge of nature's undying resilience. Yet the legacy of that fateful day remains indelibly inscribed in the collective soul of the people, a legacy urging them to protect their environment, to cherish the gifts of the natural world, and to remain ever vigilant against the creeping evils of greed and disregard. Thus, beneath a sky that now shone with the promise of a renewed tomorrow, the ancient land and its guardians embraced a future defined not by the lingering shadow of the Wendigo but by the enduring light of the spirit bear. The eternal dance between creation and destruction, between the sacred and the profane, continued unabated, but as long as there were those who revered the natural balance and honored the wisdom of their ancestors, the earth would always find its way to heal. In that final, hallowed moment, when the echoes of battle receded into gentle murmurs and the natural world resumed its timeless rhythm, the people knew with unwavering certainty that nature, with all its beauty and mystery, would forever hold the power to restore equilibrium. The curse had been banished, if only for a season, and the legacy of the divine spirit bear offered a resounding call to stewardship, compassion, and the sacred duty to protect our world for all generations to come.